My name is Sarah Dorner, and I am the Director of Graduate and International Admissions. And with me today is Associate Dean of Academic Affairs and Professor of Law, Rebecca Purdom. And we are here today to speak to you all about the value of an LLM. So we are from the University of New Hampshire Franklin Pierce School of Law. We are an ABA accredited top 100 law school, and we have the #4 IP law program in the US. We're located in the state of New Hampshire, about 1 hour from Boston, Massachusetts. We have two other folks joining us a little bit later on today. My colleague Marie Bogus will be joining us to help keep an eye on the questions coming in. So do feel free at any time during the presentation to use that Q&A section, and we will do our best to keep an eye on that and answer your questions as they come in. And then a little later in the presentation, you'll hear from one of our current LLM students, Mudassar Hussain from India, who will speak a little bit about his experience. All right, so before we really dive into the value of an LLM, I thought it might be helpful for everyone joining us today to get a brief overview of how the US legal education system works as compared to the legal education system in other countries. So I'm going to turn it over here to Associate Dean of Academic Affairs, Rebecca Purdom, to tell us a little bit more about that.
Great, thank you, Sarah, and welcome everybody. It's exciting to be on a webinar with everyone. So in most countries of the world, there is a first degree in law. Many countries, that's an LL.B degree. So you can finish your primary schooling, in the United States, we call high school, and then you can get your first degree in law. And that typically qualifies students to be some type of a lawyer when they graduate. In the United States, that is not the case. There is no first degree in law that will qualify you to be any type of lawyer. There are a couple of bachelor's degrees or first degrees that have the word law or legal in them, but those are not the equivalent of a licensing degree. So all American students who wish to be lawyers must first get a bachelor's degree. They have a first degree in at least one subject and often two. My first degree was in biology and in journalism. And so I worked as a newspaper reporter for a couple of years. And then you may go on to a graduate degree, a Juris Doctorate in the United States. If you want to become a licensed lawyer, you have to have a bachelor's and a second degree, a Juris Doctorate. That makes the LL.M degree an interesting degree because it serves two different functions in the United States. And we'll talk about this a little bit more. But if you are an American student, you typically, like me, have a first degree in one subject, a Juris Doctorate, and you may continue on to an LL.M, typically if you want to have a specialty. If I wanted to be a tax lawyer or an intellectual property lawyer, I might go on and get an LL.M degree. Foreign students who have an LL.B, who have a first degree in law, we allow to skip the Juris Doctorate. You may, to be clear, you are welcome to earn a Juris Doctorate if you would like to have a Juris Doctorate. But many students go directly to the LL.M. And that first degree in law will qualify you for the LL.M, the advanced degree. But there are two types of LL.Ms. The first is the one I described already. The LL.M degree that American students might take is a specialized degree. If you have an LL.B, you may take that specialized LL.M. So our institution, for example, has a specialized LL.M in intellectual property. There is a second type of LL.M that you'll see at many American law schools, which is essentially an American law degree that is designed specifically to help foreign attorneys take the bar, to become licensed American attorneys. And that is a much more generalist degree that focuses on the typical information that American students or students working in the American system would learn in the first year of their JD. So today you'll hear me talk a little bit about specialized LL.Ms and general, or what we sometimes call American LL.Ms. The specialized LL.M is in a topic. The general or the American LL.M is a general degree that is mostly focused on taking a bar. How'd I do, Sarah?
Excellent, thank you. I think you covered it all. I'm curious too, just before we move on, Dean Purdom, could you take a moment just to tell us a little about your background and teaching experience and what led you to UNH Franklin Pierce?
Sure, happy to do it. I'm fairly new at Franklin Pierce. I have been at a number of law schools over my career. I went to law school and studied for environmental law, and I still do some environmental law as a practicing attorney. But I taught at Vermont Law School. I taught a little bit at Stanford Law School. Most recently was at Emory Law School in Atlanta, and I was very excited to come up to UNH and come up to New Hampshire. My particular academic specialty has been in graduate degrees. I have spent most of the time in my career at law schools concentrating on LL.M. degrees, master's degrees, SJD, PhD degrees, the kinds of degrees that bring in students like the people on this webinar. I'm excited to expand the kind of legal education that we have in the United States to students outside of the JD. And so I've spent quite a bit of time doing that, and I'm really excited to be part of this school and this program. We have really unique students. You're going to hear from one of them today, who bring a wealth of experience into the program and are kind of important parts of what we're doing in the United States right now, as we bring folks in to talk about American law and send them back to their home countries to help us build bridges across different specialties in different areas. So that's me.
Thank you, thank you. And we, a little bit later in the presentation today, we'll talk a little bit more about the LL.M. programs that we offer here at UNH Franklin Pierce. We do have 3 LL.Ms in intellectual property, commerce and technology, and international criminal law and justice. So we'll talk more about those a little bit later on today. All right, so as we kind of get now into more about the value of an LL.M. and why do this, I think a lot of people want to know, what are you going to get out of this? So first and foremost, you're going to improve your knowledge of the US legal system. You're going to improve your legal English and English conversational skills. And so I want to ask, Dean Purdom, kind of why is that important? Why is it helpful for foreign students to improve their knowledge of the US legal system?
Understanding the US legal system is not easy. Those of us who grew up in the American legal system are often very surprised when we get to an American law school to learn all sorts of things we didn't know by living in the culture. It is a much more complex and varied system that I think is apparent to folks who engage with it every day. It is also a system that folks internationally encounter all of the time. For good or for ill, the systems and the structures that we have created in the United States end up impacting international business. And so understanding those structures and understanding the pressures that play in those structures is very important. The US legal system is old and complex, and challenging in some ways. And so understanding the structure involves understanding the history and the way it evolved over time, sometimes very awkwardly, particularly in the international context. The other thing you said, Sarah, that's worth noting is legal English is deceptive. It is not like conversational English, and it is not like standard English. So many folks who have very good English skills will come into an American law school and be suddenly startled by the ways in which legal English is used. And I say that as someone who was raised in the United States and is born speaking English. Legal English is very different in some very important contexts. So even if you are a well-trained attorney, if you don't have the English that is used within the legal system, you can be at a significant disadvantage when you are interacting with American companies. I will say I've seen this firsthand. I've worked both in Africa and in Brazil, and I have negotiated contracts with very well-educated Brazilian lawyers where particular provisions of those contracts meant something different in legal English than they would in standard English. So being part of an LL.M. program will give you that both legal foundation, but also that linguistic foundation that is very important if you're interacting at all with American legal systems.
Thank you. That's really helpful context. And I'm seeing a question that I'm wondering if it makes sense to to kind of throw this to you now and see if you have any thoughts on it. There's a question here saying that for Indian lawyers, they're wondering, is an LLM from the UK better or from the US? The person asking this question says they've heard that since the UK is the same jurisdiction, common law, so many Indian people prefer to choose that. So I'm wondering if certainly I don't expect that you're an expert on the UK's legal system, but if you can comment on that question at all.
Absolutely. That's a great question and often comes up. So I'm going to back up one step. Some folks on this webinar probably understand the difference between the civil code and the common law system, but let me say one sentence on that. Most of the world works in a civil code system, which means the primary basis of law is in a written document, usually statutes or a very long and complex constitution. The United States, England, and a handful of other countries, a small handful of other countries in the United States, work on a common law system, which means the fundamental basis of the law is often a very short constitution. The United States Constitution is 5 articles and 4 pages long. It is very short. And then a series of judge-made decisions. It is the common law made by judges. So the questioner is right. The United States and England are both common law jurisdictions. The United States may have borrowed that from the English system. The challenge in your question is a question of where you want to work. If you would like to work largely in Europe and in systems where you will be going back and forth to London or working with English companies, the English LLM may make a lot of sense. If you're working with American companies, I think an American LLM gives you a slight advantage. And the reason is mostly that legal English question I said before. American legal English and UK legal English is also different. And I have negotiated contracts between New York and London, and we had to really struggle through the different definitions in those sets of contracts. So I think that that is an important distinction that may be guided by your kind of future plans. I'll also say that a common law system is not a common law system. The American system is both common law, but also has a hefty dose of federalism. In short term, that is that we have a federal government and we have state governments that have a lot of autonomy. And navigating between federal law and state law in the United States is very different than in any other common law country. For example, most contract law is controlled at the state level. So the state in which your company was founded and the state in which your company does business can dictate the terms of your contracts, can dictate the terms of your payment plans, can dictate the terms of your remedies if there's a problem in the contract. That is very different in the United States than it is, for example, in the UK.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So I think a couple of other comments here in terms of what you'll gain from doing the LLM. So the eligibility to take a US bar exam. And so, but before we talk a little more about that, I'm wondering, Dean Purdom, if you could just very kind of briefly tell us, what is the US bar exam?
Absolutely. The US bar exam is weird. It is a licensing exam, and I know almost every country in the world has some form of licensing exam for its attorneys. In the United States, broadly, there are 2 parts to the licensing exam. There is one part that is a national exam that almost, but not all, states use as one half of their exam. The other part of the exam is a state-specific exam. All legal licenses in the United States are issued by the state Supreme Court of that state. So you take a national exam and you take a state-specific exam. So you have to study for the laws in those states. Many foreign attorneys who wish to take a US credential study for New York. It's really hard to pass the New York bar. Some study for another state. Many study for New Hampshire because we are in New Hampshire. There are reciprocity rules. There are rules that if you have passed one state's bar and worked for a couple of years, you can waive or you can gain license in another state bar. So navigating the decision to take a bar, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and which bar to take becomes an important decision in the United States. But that's the exam. It's a national exam and then a state exam, and you must pass both parts to be licensed.
Thank you. And I'm seeing a question here that I think is relevant to respond to now. This person's wondering if they would be eligible for a US bar exam if they go with a specialized LLM degree.
So I'm going to give you a very famous answer that all law professors give in the United States. So this is your first lesson if you come to the United States. If you ask an American law professor a question, the answer is, it depends. It depends on whether or not you take courses within that specialized LLM that will qualify you for the particular state where you want to study for the bar. Most states set out a couple of different, one or two different pathways to take a bar exam. And I'm going to use New York as an example because that's one many foreign attorneys want to take. New York has given us 5 different ways that people can qualify for the bar exam. One is to graduate with a JD degree, like a traditional American trained student. The second way is to get an LLM that has a very specific number of courses. That is that American LLM. But there's 3 other ways to take a bar exam in New York. You can take a specialized LLM and take some courses that will qualify you through one of those pathways. You could take a specialized LLM but be highly credentialed in your home country and use your home credential to take the American bar. You could do that even without an LLM in certain cases. You would have a really hard time passing if you did not have any American training. So one of the things we do in our specialized LLMs is spend some time with students, helping them decide which state they want to take. And if they want to take a bar exam in that state, what particular courses they would need to follow a pathway. I should say it is always the student's responsibility to make sure that you have fulfilled your obligations, but we are here to counsel you and help you at our law school and at every American law school. We will help you navigate that choice. It sometimes means a trade-off. If you are in a specialized LLM program, and LLM programs are short, you may have to choose between taking a class that will qualify you for a bar and taking one of your specialized classes. And that, again, is an individual decision based on the student. Great question. Very, very important question to consider as you go forward.
And I guess, to the comment here about, the bar exam really being a credential that's valued by employers. What I hear from students is that even if they don't plan to practice in the US and they plan to return to their home country, that employers really do. It stands out on their resume if they have, if they've passed a US bar exam. Has that been your experience as well in working with LLM students?
I've had a very mixed experience. Some employers think an American license is really important and it does pop out on a resume. Other employers are really excited by an American trained LLM student and don't care about the bar exam. So it depends a little bit about where you are practicing and what kind of work you will be doing. And I think that's something we can help folks through our career services office and through counseling. And again, both at UNH, but any law school you talk to, that's something to ask, to kind of have some advice and support about the field that you want to enter and how you can do that.
Great, thank you. So more of the it depends kind of response.
It depends.
There. It depends. And I think the other comment I want to make from this slide here is what you'll get out of a program is often students do leave with some work products that they can show future employers. I don't know, Dean Purdom, I keep turning it to you, but I don't know if you want to elaborate on that
Sure.
at all.
Briefly, one of the things that American employers, and I think international employers who have Americans on staff or American-based expectations look for in applicants are writing samples. That's a term of art. They want to see a writing sample that looks like the kind of product that might be produced either in a traditional law school or in their company or both. One of the things we work at our institution and most other LLM programs in the United States will do is have you write a couple of documents with training that then can serve as those writing samples. Having a portfolio of 2 or 3 written pieces is really important. And I'll say it's important for the learning. Most of what we do as at least American attorneys is write documents. In the common law system, you write a lot more than you do in classic civil code systems. because we are trying to convince a judge what to make the law, we spend a lot of time writing arguments and writing persuasive pieces. In most civil code countries, you are writing analytical pieces that simply show that the facts that you have pertain to the civil code or the law that was written. In the common law system, there's a lot of specialized writing. So making sure that you have been trained to do that writing and then showing you can do it with a portfolio of work becomes very important to employers.
Thank you. I'm going to move us to our next slide now. We have so much to get through today. And again, back to this, the value of an LLM. So I think a really important piece of this is the cultural exchange piece. Going to another country to spend time to live and to study is you're going to appreciate a culture in new ways, overcome the challenges of just moving to and living in a new country. It really, we hear from students that they just it opens their eyes to the world in new ways and they gain a greater understanding of the world. And then certainly they're finding that employers really value this international travel and study experience. It shows that they're brave and willing to take risks and step outside their comfort zone. So I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that point.
Just briefly, I have found that it is incredibly more and more important to employers to see that before you came to my company, you had gone to another country and you learned to navigate it. Increasingly, employers are reluctant to spend money or energy on an employee for them to go overseas for the first time because it's tough. I have moved overseas and lived overseas a couple of times. And the first time I did, just finding my bearings and being able to navigate successfully within a legal culture that wasn't my own, I made 3 or 4 really big mistakes on how I addressed people, when I thought it was appropriate to make an argument, how I made an argument, when I presented written work. All of that is cultural. And so learning to be successful in a space makes you much more, in a foreign space, makes your employer much more willing to hire you and send you to the United States or to the UK or to Europe, knowing that you won't, frankly, make a mistake on their dime.
Yeah.
Instead, you've done it within a controlled setting. And we, at least at UNH, spend some energy making sure that you've had those opportunities to network, to practice, to understand what the culture is like. So you'll be successful when you do that as a professional.
Thank you. And you mentioned networking, which kind of leads us to our next point. Before I move on, though, I do want to point out that all of these slides that you're seeing, there's some testimonials, some quotes from some of our former students or even current students. I'm not taking the time to read those, but certainly, the recording will be available after this presentation. And if folks want to reach out, we're happy to share the slides with you as well. But I think, who better to kind of speak to the value of an LLM than graduates of the program. So I did want to include some feedback that they have shared along the way. And so the networking piece, I think, is a really, really big component of the value of an LLM. So first and foremost, you're going to come to, in our case, the US, and you're going to meet students from around the world and grow your professional network just with the students that are here on campus with you. So, this year at UNH Franklin Pierce, we have students from India, Thailand, Taiwan, Brazil, South Korea, China, and you form really, I think, kind of unique, special relationships with these students while you're here. So I think that we hear from students that they go on to, that the relationships they form while they're here with us go on to be, professional relationships in the future. In addition, you're going to build relationships with faculty. So our faculty are, at most law schools in the US are really plugged in, and they are really excited to connect students to their network as well. And we have a quote here from our Associate Dean of Administration and Enrollment, who earned his LLM, and says that, he's still years and years later, still really connected with the faculty from that program who really helped to broaden his professional network. So I think that that's a really important piece there as well. And, I know here at UNH Franklin Pierce, our faculty truly do have an open door policy and are so excited to work with and connect with our international LLM students. So there really is opportunity to build meaningful relationships with faculty. And then I think the other piece too of coming to US Law School is that there's often opportunities to connect with folks from industry. So, we offer an intellectual property summer institute where we're bringing kind of big name IP folks who are really practicing in the field to campus. We also have these regular kind of lunch and learn series that we do. And so I think that it gives students an opportunity to connect with professionals in the field while they're here as students. And then, of course, our law school in particular has a really strong global alumni network with alumni in over 80 countries. And so students have an opportunity to connect and become a part of that alumni network. So I think that there's a lot of value add there. So I'll pause, Dean Purdom, and just see if you want to add anything to that.
I think you've made a lot of good points. One of the things I am I've seen this at other schools that have specialized networks. I am so struck at UNH that both the IP network and frankly, the International Justice Network, they talk to each other, they know each other. Students who have graduated, students who were in school together, students who are graduates reach out to each other. We know that they hire each other. We know that this is a way that our graduates get jobs, is to reach out to alumni, and our faculty are incredibly well connected. And so we find that a faculty member will get a call from a student that says, I'm looking for a job, and I'll say, oh, I know someone from 6 years ago, let me connect you. And those kinds of relationships become incredibly important, many of them outside of the United States. It's a slightly magical thing that happens in any of these LLM programs. I think UNH does it particularly well, but I think you will find that at many law schools that have small specialized programs, those networks become incredibly important and frankly lucrative.
Magical, I think, is such a great word to kind of describe that. Graduates of LLM programs they're proud of their school, and they really want to help the next generation of students behind them. We're really fortunate here that we have, for those of you from India, one of our alumni from India has sponsored a scholarship for a student in our intellectual property program, so that they can come and do their LLM. So I think, you see this at other schools as well, that alumni really want to give back and support students from their country to be able to have a similar opportunity to the one they had in pursuing their LLM in the US. All right, so in terms of the value of an LLM and what it does for your career, so Dean Purdom, can you take a moment just to tell us what is optional practical training?
So optional practical training, you'll hear people say OPT. What they mean is optional practical training is a program through the US State Department that allows a student who has spent at least 1 year, you have to spend a full year in the United States as a student. Once they graduate, they may take another year to work in the States under an extended visa. So many of our students will do 1 year as an LLM student in the United States, and then a second year working for a US company. That is a recognized program. Many companies hire students explicitly on the OPT visa, knowing that they are here for 1 year and will then go home. Some students, 1 year of work in the United States is plenty, and they're ready to go home after that. Some students find an employer who is willing to sponsor them for a continued work visa through that connection. But it's a helpful way for students to not only complete their degree, but get another year of working off of that degree in an American setting.
Could you just take a moment to kind of speak to why would an employer see it as valuable for an LLM graduate to have actual work experience here in the US?
I'll talk about both the American employer who might hire and then the employer back home who might be excited about it. Many American employers like OPT folks because it is a 1 year commitment. They aren't necessarily hiring someone for the next 10 or 15 years, knowing that it's only a 1 year commitment where they get to try out a student or a graduate, maybe extend an offer, maybe not, is an exciting way for them to bring diversity into their company and not necessarily have a long-term commitment. So you'll find American employers excited about OPT. Employers back home really like to see American work experience. And so having 1 year says, I was qualified to work in the United States, I successfully worked in the United States, but also gives you a reason to return home. I didn't lose my job in the United States. I was very successful, my visa ran out. So it makes for an easy way to say why you only did 1 year of work in the United States and then we're applying back home. That's a little easier than saying I was qualified to work in the United States and I didn't like the work, or the job wasn't successful. You can be highly successful at an OPT job and then return home because that is the design of the program. Many foreign employers understand that. So if you are 6 months into a job in the United States and begin applying back home in Brazil or back home in India, the employers will understand that program and be excited to see you come.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So, I think, and we spoke a little bit about this before, that really that LLM degree is going to give you qualifications for global legal practice. In some countries, it's often a requirement for academic teaching positions. So if that's what you're looking to do in the future, then having that LLM is going to help you on that career path. And we hear too a lot from students that it really just keeps the doors open, similar to here in the US, where even if you don't plan to use your law degree, having that degree is really valuable and can be applied to so many jobs. We hear similar things from students about their LLM degree, that just coming and having this educational experience helps them grow in new ways and adds value to their career, even if they don't end up, going into a job where they specifically need that degree. Oh, please go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, I was just going to add that is really important to note. If you get a law degree, we want you to practice law. We want you to use your law degree. But it's worth noting, particularly in American culture or in companies that are familiar with American culture, having a law degree is a particular status that I think might be different in some other countries. Again, because in the United States, you cannot be a lawyer unless you have both a first degree and a Juris Doctorate. It carries more status than in some countries where the law degree is only the first degree. In the United States, if you walk into a room and say, I am a lawyer, and frankly, women in particular, if you walk into a room and say, I have a law degree, it changes the temperature of the room. It changes the seriousness with which people take your ideas and what you have to say. And frankly, I was on a school board, and if I walked in and at 31 years old and said, I have a law degree, I was elected to the school board. There was nothing about that was about the practice of law, but there is something about the degree itself that will carry weight in those cultural settings. And it's worth knowing that if you're working in any space that has an experience with American legal degrees or American legal education.
I'm sitting here kind of smiling and nodding, and I realize probably the viewers can't actually see me, but yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that comment in terms of the status, and yes, so absolutely. So thank you for adding that. I see one question here that I want to just take a moment to address. This person's wondering, how much value is there to an LLM from the US if I don't intend to practice in the US? So we spoke a little about this, but I'm wondering if you could just take a quick moment to touch on that a bit more.
Sure, it depends. That is a hard question to ask, not knowing kind of the country or the situation folks are coming from. It differs. If you don't practice in the United States, but you are working with American companies or you're working with companies that have American contacts, it can be very lucrative. The return on investment on that can be very high. Many companies will only staff their general counsel's office or their foreign office with folks with American credentials. So I've seen that. And again, most of my experience is in Africa and Brazil, but I have seen entire offices that are only staffed with people who have LLMs, because they are working on American contracts, because they are working on American deals, even though they don't have necessarily American subsidiaries. In a globalized economy, often people will choose either American or European law as the base law, regardless of where the deal is going down. So I have seen contracts that were purely between India and France that chose American law as the jurisdiction because there was one subsidiary in America and those courts were considered most reliable in that situation. So it can have a high return if you are working in those kinds of industries.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think, this in terms of kind of the return on investment, right, is that this is going to look a little differently for everyone, but an LLM degree is going to help you get a job. It often will help you get promoted sooner. And those dollars, add up over, getting the job, getting promoted, so that it really is a worthwhile investment. There is some research out there that suggests that in the US, lawyers with their LLM can bring home the equivalent of a second-year associate as a first-year associate if they have that LLM degree. So I think it's hard to quantify some of these things, but anecdotally, we hear that it does help students get ahead. It's an investment of time and money to come to the US, or if it's a different country, to pursue your LLM. And so I think one tip for students is to certainly ask law schools that you're interested in applying to about scholarship opportunities. But we certainly hear from students that in the end, it was an upfront investment, but it was absolutely worth it and paid off for them in the end. Do you have anything to add to that, Dean Purdom, before we?
There is one question in the chat that I think is relevant. A student is asking if foreign law students are able to get summer internships or full-time jobs at law firms compared to American students. There's a tricky answer there that has to do with the type of visa that you come in on. Students who come in on a student visa and have only been in the country for 6 months don't qualify for certain things. If you've been here for a year, that OPT is available to you. You're able to use that extended year. The internships are fairly easy. Full-time jobs are a little trickier, but you have the opportunity through a couple of different mechanisms to get work experience. And that is the piece I think is really relevant here, ensuring that you have an opportunity to have a little practice experience in a firm, in an agency office, in a company, helps also on that return of investment. Getting a little work experience can actually be another resume builder that helps move you forward. And so then when you go to the job, you've actually already performed those tasks and can qualify for a higher position or higher pay.
I'm wondering too, I think this connects to a little bit to clinics and the opportunity for students to get some hands-on work experience while they're pursuing their LLM. Could you just take a quick moment to 30 seconds kind of what are clinics and why are they valuable?
So many law schools have many types of clinics. I will be general, but when you talk to any law school, it's worth asking about their specific clinic. Typically clinics are like little mini law firms that are conducted by the law school. And so the law school itself will have an office. There will be a licensed attorney who supervises, and the students will work on live cases with real clients and represent those clients under special practice rules that allow students to represent clients in that particular space. Broadly, there are 2 types of clinics. There's a lot of types of clinics, but broadly, there are 2 types. One is a trial-like situation. For example, at our law school, we have a criminal clinic where students represent criminal defendants in court from the time they are arrested to the time they are arraigned, through their trials. Once they are sentenced, when they appeal their sentence, the students will actually help represent clients in a live trial setting. The other kind of clinic is transactional, where you are representing businesses. Again, our law school has a clinic that represents businesses that are looking for intellectual property help, that are working on copyright cases or applying for patents. Those kinds of clinics, the students work again with real clients, draft real documents, file real documents, and work through a system that is supervised by a licensed attorney, but they get to do legal work. Our LLM students may work in all of our clinics. That is worth asking whatever law school you apply to. Some law schools allow their LLM students to participate in clinics. Some law schools do not and reserve those seats only for their JD students. So ask, make sure you have clarity there. But if you have an opportunity to work in a clinic, it can be really helpful. And based on the earlier question, that is not a visa problem. It is you earn credit when you work in a clinic. So you don't have any problems with your work visas with the number of months you've been in the States. That's something you can do right in the door, at least in terms of your immigration status.
a great opportunity, I would think, for students who maybe, don't have the time to stay and do optional practical training, that they could still get some sort of US work experience as part of their degree.
Yeah.
And there's a question here about the timeline of all this. So most LLM programs are one academic year. So, and 24 credits. So in the US, the academic year typically starts in August and concludes in May. Some LLM programs will have entry in the spring semester, which begins in January. And then the optional practical training allows you to stay in the US for a year to work. In terms of for students who also want to prepare for a bar exam, Dean Purdom, what would they be looking at for a timeline here?
So the bar exam in the United States is offered twice a year. It is offered in July and in February. So many students who start their program in the fall, in August or September, take their first semester in our fall, take their second semester in our spring, graduate in May, and then study like mad all summer and take the bar exam in July. That's a sprint, and those couple of months studying are tough, but many students will do that. Some students will take an additional amount of time, finish their degree in 2 semesters, and then take another 6 or 9 months to study and take the bar in February. That is often tempting to think, oh, it would be great to have more time to study. The statistics are unclear that that's a good idea. Sometimes we've found that students studying in an intense period of time perform better than students who have 6 or 9 months to study because it's easy to get distracted. But those are the 2 paths students typically take. I have also found that students who decide to delay the bar exam to take it in February do so while they are working a job. And it is not advised for anyone to work a job and study for the bar exam at the same time. That is too hard. So that's the way it is. If you have graduated from a program and you are not taking advantage of optional practical training, then to stay in the United States to take a bar exam is tricky because you need to have status to stay in the United States. So some students have found that they fly home, study for the bar exam, come back and take it in February, and that also can be challenging.
That's helpful. And I think, just a plug for a future webinar, I think a lot of what we're talking about today really gets to kind of, making the most of your LLM experience. So clinics, optional practical training, preparing for US bar exams. So just so folks know, we'll be holding another webinar on November 18th that will go into a little bit more detail about some of the topics we've touched on today. I do want to take to make sure that we give Mudasser some time. I want to turn it over to him just to tell us a little bit about his background and how he went about deciding to pursue his LLM with UNH Franklin Pierce, and ultimately, because I think Mudasser, you really weighed is this worth doing? Is there value in it? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you finally arrived at your decision to pursue your LLM with us.
Yes, Sarah, thank you. When I decided to do LLM, first thing I had to do was decide whether LLM will add some value to my profile. So to do that, I had to ask myself certain questions. So these were the questions that I asked myself. Will the LLM program help my career prospects? And again, it depends largely on your career goals. If you want to get into academics, then an LLM has a great value. If you want to specialize in a particular field of law, LLM again could be of great value. I wanted to specialize in IP law, and therefore I saw a lot of value in pursuing a specialized LLM in IP. I had no prior experience with IP, and I hope to compensate it with an LLM from UNH Franklin Pierce. The next question that I asked myself is, what value will a foreign LLM degree bring when compared to an LLM in your own country? So India, I come from India, and India also offers a lot of LLM programs. But what I have seen is foreign LLMs from reputed universities are given importance by a lot of law firms. Law firms prefer students from top tier law schools. Personally, for me, I did not come from a top tier law school, and I wanted to offset that by getting an LLM from a reputed foreign institution. The next question that I asked myself was, does the value of LLM depend on whether I pursue it in the UK or the USA? So I just saw that someone from India had a similar question on this. And I get why many people from India have this question, because most of the laws that we follow in India are left behind by Britishers. So UK had been the ideal location for Indian students planning to pursue LLM for a long time. But based on my discussion with my colleagues and mentors, I was strongly told to prefer USA. And I personally felt that the curriculum followed by US law schools are more relevant to the current age as compared to the UK. Again, it's my personal opinion. And again, it depends on whether you want to practice in USA or you want to practice in Europe. The next question was, will a foreign LLM be of any practical use in my home country? I see that there was a relevant question to this again. Specialized LLMs from foreign institutions could add a lot of value to your profile due to increased globalization. Having knowledge and experience in legal system of another country can come in handy. I have an interest in patent law, and I know for a fact that Indian IP firms would prefer having people who have experience with US patents. At UNH Law, I'm learning about patents throughout my time here. So I think when I go back, it will definitely help me. The next question was, will I be allowed to practice law in the country where I plan to do my LLM? Though I plan to go back to India, I always wanted to know whether I have the option of staying back in US and working. And to do that, getting the bar membership here is very important. And it turns out that if I do an LLM and if I choose the right courses, I'll be eligible to take the New York bar, which I plan to do next July. And what I've seen is US work experience adds a great value. The 1-year optional practical training that we get, it will add a great value. Because as a lawyer in India, I worked with a lot of licensing agreements with US companies. It definitely gives you a competitive edge if you have experience with US licensing regulations. That's one of the courses that I have taken, technology licensing, and I believe that it will help me even when I go back to India and practice law, and especially when I'm working with US companies. The last question that I asked myself was, do the benefits of foreign LLM justify the huge investment that I make, both in terms of money and time? For most of us, LLM is a huge commitment, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of your time. You're 1 year away from your family. You've come so far. You've invested so much of money. Ultimately, you want to know whether it is ultimately worth it or not. So this question, the answer to it depends on the objective you set out for yourself. IP law firms in India prefer candidates with prior IP experience or a degree from a reputed institution. I had neither. I did not come from a good law school, and I did not have any prior experience in IP. I worked for 2 years, but I had no experience in IP. So I generally believe that if I get a LLM from UNH Franklin Pierce, then it could help me offset my disadvantage in getting a job, and the experience that I gain here and the degree from UNH Franklin Pierce and the alumni network, the strong alumni network that is there in UNH Franklin Pierce, I thought that would help me get a job when I go back to India. So I definitely thought that it would be worth my time and money to do LLM from here.
Thank you, Munasir. We'll have to do kind of like a 12 months from now, a follow-up on kind of where you are and how your career is progressing. But thank you for sharing those thoughts. I do want to just take a few minutes. I think we're kind of coming up on the hour here, so I'd like to just take a few moments to share a little bit more about the University of New Hampshire Franklin Pierce School of Law and our 3 different LLM programs. There are some questions coming in, and we're doing our best to kind of respond to them. If we're not able to get to them live or offline, we'll make sure to follow up with folks after. If you're not asking anonymously, we'll do our best to connect with you. So, at UNH Franklin Pierce, we have 3 LLM programs. We offer an intellectual property, which is kind of our, we're the number 4 IP law program in the US. So that's kind of our primary LLM, and that's offered either fully on campus or fully online. Also a fully on campus LLM program is our Commerce and Technology LLM. And then we have an International Criminal Law and Justice LLM that's offered 100% online. So just kind of, high level overview about the school and our programs is, as I mentioned, we have a fabulous global alumni network that is really connected still to the school and to our current students. Students with us do have the opportunity to gain some real world experience through clinics and immersive classroom experiences. We also have an academic success program that will assist students with kind of general study skills so that they're successful in a US legal classroom, and also to support students who are interested in taking a bar exam. In addition, our career services office is absolutely fantastic and will work with students on their resume and cover letters, interviewing skills, networking, and will support students through the job search process. We do, this question is kind of the number one question about, are there any scholarships available? So we, in addition to really working hard to keep our tuition low, we do also have a number of partial tuition scholarships available to students. New Hampshire, just a little bit about where we're located. So we are in, if you can kind of see there, we're in the northeast of the US, close to international airports, major cities. It's a beautiful, beautiful state with all 4 seasons. You can kind of see in the background behind me some of the fall foliage, and that's kind of what things look like today, actually. It's really a beautiful time of year here. In addition, New Hampshire is ranked the #1 safest state in the US. So it really is, a wonderful place to live and to learn. So I'll take just a quick moment, and forgive me, I don't want to keep us over, but I do want to just quickly talk about each of our programs. So our intellectual property LLM will prepare students for the IP issues of the future. More than half of our faculty have expertise in intellectual property. We're also really proud of our IP library and our intellectual property and transaction clinic. So students will have opportunities to take courses in a variety of intellectual property areas, trademarks, patents, copyright. The program really gives students the flexibility to focus on their specific areas of interest, or to take a more generalized approach as well. We've mentioned our alumni a little bit, so just want to kind of give you some overview of where they're located. But really, our alumni are leading IP law and policy in places like Argentina, Nigeria, Taiwan, as well as for global tech giants and leading companies around the world. The Commerce and Technology LLM, in this program, you'll address issues that face new businesses and e-commerce in the global information age economy. You'll take courses in 3 elective areas. Those areas are intellectual property, transactions and information age commercial law, and then international perspective and regulation tax. This next slide here that I want to share, I'm certainly not going to go through and read that, but this kind of just gives you an overview of the list of kind of IP and IP related courses that we offer here. Certainly, even still, the list is very expansive, but this here isn't even a complete comprehensive list. So there really is a wealth of opportunities here to take a variety of electives while you're a student in our intellectual property or commerce and technology program. And then, as I mentioned, our International Criminal Law and Justice LLM is offered 100% online. It's the only fully online transnational crime program available in the US. And in this program, you'll explore kind of the fast-paced developments in the globalization of commerce, terrorism, human rights, and criminal law. So down here, just a sample of some of the courses that we offer in that program is comparative criminal justice systems, drugs and weapons trafficking, international criminal courts and special tribunals, and piracy and terrorism. I do just want to take a moment, just because we spoke so much about optional practical training today, and just point out that for students who are pursuing their LLM degree online, they would not be eligible for that optional practical training. To do that, you do need to come to the US to complete your LLM degree. So certainly, I think, again, for students, that getting back to that, it depends, if you're looking to just work in your country and earn your degree, then the online program might be an okay fit for you. But if one of your goals is to get US work experience, then you'd want to be looking for a program that's delivered on campus. Our students, we spoke a little bit before, but they are just absolutely fantastic, and they come from around the world. So, in recent years, we've had LLM students from Brazil, Canada, China, Germany, Singapore, South Korea, really all over the globe. This year, we are really excited. We've been holding a weekly open seminar to build international community. And this program brings together our LLM students, our JD students, faculty and staff, just to learn a little bit more about one another together and where we come from. You know, students have shared a little bit about the Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival. We've learned a little bit about Korean and Filipino pop culture, a little about the history of the indigenous people of Taiwan. So it's really been a wonderful opportunity to come together and just learn a little bit more about each other. Our LLM students are really engaged in the larger student community and participate in all of the student organizations that we offer. We have 2 LLM representatives on the Student Bar Association. And then here is just kind of a sample of some of the other student organizations that our LLM students are a part of. I know in previous years, the Outdoors Club, they would get pictures from the students on some of the amazing hikes they were doing in the New England region. So lots of opportunity to engage outside of the classroom as well. And then, you know, we spoke a lot today about the bar exam. So as I mentioned, our academic success program is going to help students with, you know, workshops on skill building for success in the classroom and with preparing for a US bar exam. Students do have an opportunity to take a preliminary bar exam to, you know, gain some practice in what this will actually feel like to take the exam. And we offer both, you know, group workshops and one-on-one sessions as well. In addition, in the spring, there's an online course offered that is a bar review course that students are eligible to take as well. So the numbers here in front are the tuition rates for this current academic year. So our residential program is $40,000 US, and then the online program is you pay per credit. Both programs are a total of 24 credits to earn your LLM. The in-person program is completed on a full time, so you're here for 1 year. The online program, students can complete that program on a full-time schedule in 1 calendar year or part-time in up to 3 years. So you can really set the pace in that program. I know that these numbers they're big, right? But so we know, but we really have worked hard. You know, our tuition is we've really tried to stay competitive, and at the same time still be able to offer students scholarships. So this is just a number of the partial tuition scholarships that we offer. Students are eligible to earn more than 1 scholarship. And scholarships decisions are made both based on both, you know, merit, your academic record, professional experience, and financial needs. So we really take a holistic approach to this and really do what we can to make it possible for students to come and be on campus with us and earn their LLM. A quick overview, you know, I think kind of the application process would be an entirely separate webinar, but just a quick look at what you need to apply. So you can apply one of 2 ways. You can apply through the Law School Admissions Council, or we do have an application on our website. Either way, the supporting document that you need to submit is the same. So 2 letters of recommendation, your resume or CV, a personal statement that gets into, you know, your career goals and why you want to pursue your LLM, what you hope to get out of it, how you'll contribute while you're here, your official transcripts. And for students who are applying with degrees from foreign universities, we do require that these transcripts be evaluated by a credential authentication service. And then finally, for students who are coming from countries where English is not the native language, we do request TOEFL or IELTS scores. Applications are now open for both our residential and online programs. Our residential program begins in fall. The priority application deadline is May 1, but I will say we do see the bulk of our applications kind of between November to March. And so for students who are interested in scholarship consideration, we really encourage them to apply as early as they're able. The very final deadline is in June. And then the online program for January admission, students are applying now to start in January, or if you're looking to begin next fall, you have through the summer to apply. And so I'm going to leave it at that. My contact is on the screen. Marie Bogus, my colleague in admissions, is also here. And I'll just see, but before we wrap up, I want to kind of turn back to Dean Purdom and Marie and Mudas there and see if anybody has any final, if there's any other questions that we should answer, if you have any final comments.
No, this is, it's so exciting. I was looking at the list of participants, and it's always so exciting to see how many people are interested in just learning this information. So I hope this has been helpful for folks. We've been answering questions as quickly as we can in the Q&A, but I see we're out of time. So a few of you have typed questions in. Sarah, I believe we will answer those after the webinar. We'll answer those individually, and a couple of them were questions specific to individuals. So we'll make sure that we get back to you. But that's all to say that it's just an exciting time. It's honestly, everyone knows it's been a rough couple of years around the world. And so to be able to think again about our individual educations and how law works across the world, we have never been so interconnected. We have never been so aware that we live on a very small planet. And so the opportunity to know you and meet you and have you at our law school or at any American law school and take those connections back with you into your home country is an honor for us, and something I think we are all highly aware we need to be paying attention to now. So thank you, all 24 folks, for being on the webinar today and for starting this conversation about an American credential. I hope many of you come to Franklin Pierce. I hope many of you come to other law schools in the United States. But thank you for at least engaging in the inquiry.
Yes, I echo those thoughts, and thank you, Dean Purdom, for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us today. It's greatly appreciated. And as I mentioned earlier, we will happily share this recording with you once it's available, and we'll do our best to follow up with folks who had questions that we weren't able to get to live today. And I would just encourage you to please reach out to us. We're here to answer your questions. We want to be helpful. Email us, call us, WhatsApp, whatever works for you. We are truly happy to connect and answer your questions and help you find the right fit for you. So thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.